let's make a start. I want to begin by asking you about your squad for this weekend. I'm just wondering how things stand. I mean, you'd already ruled out Tariq Lamptey, so I'm assuming that's still the case. But what about the likes of Adam Lallana and Danny Welbeck and Aaron Connolly?
Adam Lallana, touch and go, I think. I'm not sure. We'll have to train tomorrow, see tomorrow. We'll give him as much time as possible, of course, but he's probably a little bit of a doubt, as is Danny Welbeck. Aaron's trained today, so that's more positive in terms of, we needed to give him a bit more time after the West Ham game. He missed the West Ham game with a slight feeling in his groin. So, again, with the amount of training time we've had and days in between, it hasn't been so easy to really assess where he's at. And obviously, when you look at someone like Aaron, historically, he's had some, muscle problems. So, but the fact that he's trained today, the fact that he's been on the bench in the night means that we're hopeful that he can be involved in the game. Apart from that, we have nothing fresh from the other night, as far as I'm aware, on top of my head. No.
And just update us with Tariq. When do you think he might be back? Any developments on that front?
No, he's getting closer. So, maybe the following match, that week, that's a possibility. But again, it will just depend on how well he responds over the next few days, I think.
You're at home to Wolves on Saturday. Still, of course, looking for that first home Premier League win. Would that be the perfect start to the new year for you, if you could get a victory?
Yes, it would be the perfect start. Absolutely. I can't really elaborate too much on that question, to be fair. Yeah, it would.
All right, Liz. Well, I wish you well with that. Look, we're seeing an increase in the number of positive COVID tests in the Premier League. The league say that there are no plans for a pause. Are you happy with the current Premier League protocols and what's in place at Brighton?
Yeah, I have nothing to complain about from our end. The Premier League have done it well since all this started, so no complaints with that. I think we've tried our best to adhere to everything. I think all the clubs have done the same. It's a tricky, challenging time for everybody outside of football as well, of course. So I don't think anything's going to be perfect, but we want to try and do our best to stick within the protocols, to follow the rules, the guidelines that people put to us from above, that have obviously got more information than we have, and get on with playing football.
Are you concerned by the increasing number of positive tests, though, that we're seeing from clubs?
Well, I think there's just a concern generally in terms of where the virus is, and the fact that we're going into tier 4s, and more and more of the countries under that type of restriction. So that brings a concern. And then football, even though we're a bubble, we're still part of society. So it's going to be I don't think we're surprised that there's been more cases, because, like I said, even though you follow protocols here, they have to live their lives outside just like everybody else. So there's a chance that numbers do increase, but that's the point of the protocols. It's the point of sticking to those, trying our best to stick to those, and making the best of it.
The window, of course, is opening. Look, how do things stand with Jacob Moder at the moment? You recalled him. My understanding is he's been recalled from Poznan. What's the plan for him? What's the sort of timescale?
Well, he'll join the group in the next few days, I think. Settle in and, of course, assess where he's at. He's had a slight little break because of where their season's structured. So we'll just assess him when he comes, but he'll be part of the group, and we'll look forward to working with him.
And what about Percy Tau? You said recently that you were looking into recalling him from Anderlecht, but there's a work permit issue. So what progress on that front?
No, nothing further to report. To be honest, it's still that we have to go through, but we're still in that process. So nothing to add, unfortunately.
Do you remain optimistic that you can have him available for you in January?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the plan. Again, it's not my area of speciality, but optimistic.
Sure. And with regard to any other business, I mean, any more loans possibly returning? And Matt Ryan's been explaining his situation. He's made the club stance quite clear. Is that helpful in many respects?
Well, I think for us, we need to look at the squad that we've got. I think we've got a lot of players, and it's 28 players. So clearly, that number is quite high. You have to look at the players in terms of whether there's an option to move to play football somewhere else. So we have to make sure we get that balance right, I think, in the January window.
And it is a new year. Do you have a New Year's resolution?
To keep improving. That'd be mine.
Listen, I wish you well. Thanks, Graham.
And to you, Ian. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Cheers.
Mr. Belveston, you're up next.
Hi, Graham. Hope you're well. Thank you for this.
Paul.
You often talk about how you're looking to improve and your players to improve. When you look back at your own performance over 2020, what could you have improved? What could you have done better?
Well, I think the answer is quite a lot. As always, that's the coaching process. You get to this point and you have to realise that you have to be brave enough to make mistakes. That's the biggest challenge, and there's a feeling of vulnerability there, of course, and you need a bit of courage. But the only way for us to really take the next step is to be brave enough to make those decisions and try those things and make those mistakes, because that's how you improve in life, I think. I think when I assessed 2020 as a year, on a personal level, I lost my father at the start of the season. We went into COVID, lockdown, dealing with that. Managed to get the most points that this club's ever had in the Premier League at 41. Lots of young players playing in the team. Performances, I think, have improved. The problem we've got is the results haven't quite matched the performances that we feel that we've put in, and that's where you have to do your analysis in terms of where the problems are. Of course, we're not always going to agree on that, but the key thing for me is to keep that mentality that I've had all my career, which is I haven't got all the answers. I'm not Mr. Perfect. You've got to try your very best. Fight for your team, fight for the players, and then learn from whatever happens.
In recent weeks, in terms of team selection, formation, tactics and things, have you tinkered too much at times?
You'd have to define tinker for me.
Sort of changing things, moving players around out of the positions that from the outside we'd assume were their best or more regular positions, changing things. Just you've sprung many surprises with a lot of team sheets when they've been released.
Sorry, could you elaborate? Could you give me any specific examples?
Well, Ben White, for example, the other day was wide right, wasn't he? When we're used to seeing him in the back or maybe in defensive midfield. Ali Reza as the striker again at in the last game. Things like that. I'm getting the suggestion that you don't feel that you tinker too much, that you're happy with all of your selections and things recently.
No, but it's a phrase that is out there. Tinkering. It's a media phrase, and I understand. I'd like to have played Tariq Lamptey, for example, but obviously he's injured, and then you have to find another solution. and then you look at the game, and I think Ben has the capability to play in quite a few positions. We wanted to attack through Adam Webster and Dan Burn in the lateral centre-backs positions, and felt that Ben had the physicality to play against West Ham. I would have liked to play Danny Welbeck, but we've got 2 games in 3 days, and he has a history of injury. So it doesn't seem the most sensible to play Danny Welbeck. Of course, if I was bothered about the media perception of me tinkering, then maybe I would look after myself and play Danny again. But Danny's got a slight injury. It didn't seem the most sensible thing to play him or Aaron Connolly. And then you can talk about Neil Malpai and say, well, Neil again, but in 2 games in 3 days is a big ask for somebody. We did it last year. I don't think it helped Neil too much, because in the end he gets fatigued, and in the end you lose a bit of that sharpness that I think is really important for him. So he comes back into the starting lineup on Saturday against Wolves, fresh and recovered, which I think is positive for him. So I think the reality of life is, like I said, we've got 28 players. You want to try and be fair to the guys and fair to them to so that they feel that they've got a chance to play. And at the same time, you don't want to change things too much. I think we've kept with the back 3. I think we've kept with Solly March and Tariq as wing backs. I think he's Basuma. I don't think he's probably played as well as he's ever played. Probably Solly March is probably playing as well as he's ever played. But clearly, if you don't win, you're always going to get criticised. So that's life.
What about the lack of wins at home? Have you changed anything there to try to break that cycle? Have you trained at the Amex more or anything like that?
I don't think the groundsman would be too happy if we trained at the Amex. No, and again, it's we know. I can't say anything other than it's not a nice statistic. There's no defence. I completely agree that it's not. It's we don't like it at all. What I would say is we've drawn a lot of games that we feel that we should have won. If you look at the games we lost and the teams we played, Manchester United twice, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester City. I think we've lost 7 games or 8 games. Southampton and Crystal Palace, I think the other 2 that we've lost. So we played those teams with no fans, which is of course another factor. But the reality of it is we haven't won enough at home, and it isn't good. If we'd have won more but hadn't got 41 points, would that be better? I don't know. I'm not. That's for others to decide. But clearly, I accept. That's something we want to improve, and we need to improve.
And how about the next opponents? Wolves have lost a few games recently themselves. What have you made of them, particularly since they've been without Raúl Jiménez?
Well, I think he's of course a big miss for them, but at the same time they've got some really good players to. I don't think they've replaced like for like necessarily, but they found a different solution, which is credit to them. I think they've got the organisation that's always been there. They've got players that know each other really well. Nuno's done a fantastic job there, an incredible job. And at the top end of the pitch, they've got some real quality. So a lot of what they've done is still there. They'll be a tough opponent. And we're going to have to be fighting at our best.
I wish you all the very best, Graham. Very best of luck.
Thank you.
Moose, you want to go next?
Hi, Graham. How are you?
I'm very well. Yourself?
Very well, thank you. Football continuing in this current climate. Premier League say they've got no reason to pause it, or they're not thinking about pausing it. Do you think that's good news for the health of the nation mentally? Because, obviously, a lot of people now, especially when they're at home, are actually looking forward to watching their teams play and actually being able to take their minds off what's been a pretty grim year, and going into 2021 doesn't look like improving anytime soon.
I think it's a factor. Yeah, it's a fair point. I've not really considered it that much, but I think you're onto something. So like I said before, we just have to do what the people from above think is the right thing for us to do, and that's it. That's what we'll try and do our best to do it. Whatever's right for the health of our community, the health of our people, that's the most important thing. And if that's playing football, then that's what we'll do.
And as a manager, do you think Jose was right the other day with the Fulham game? Annoyed at the fact it was called off so late. I mean, it was less than 3 hours. I mean, I know we don't have to think about fans travelling or anything like that, but I mean, in terms of getting your players psyched up and actually travelling yourselves to a game, do you think these should be called off maybe on the morning or at lunchtime?
Well, I think ideally, I agree. I think in an ideal world, but again, I don't know how ideal the world is at the moment in terms of when test results come back and when you can make those decisions and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, in an ideal world, but I'm not so sure it's as simple as that.
In terms of on the pitch, the beginning of the season, we saw goals flying in an incredible rate. Teams were hitting 4 and 5, others 6 and 7, almost on a weekend basis. The number of goals scored in all 10 games would be at least 30 and sometimes into the 40s. In the last few weeks, that's really dropped off, and we're seeing a lot of 0-0 draws, and we're seeing a lot of games that don't have many goals. I know yours at West Ham last Sunday did only one in midweek, but why is that? Are players tired, or what is it to do with, do you think?
Well, I think I remember saying at the time, I think it's a small sample originally we're making our initial observations on. I think it's a factor of small preparation stage of the season, no supporters, different things going on. So it's, and I think as the season goes on, people get into a bit more of a routine, a bit more like what they want to do. Yeah, there is probably a factor in terms of fatigue because, like I said, you're playing 2 games in 3 days, so that can affect things. Players that people have to rotate the team a little bit, which can sometimes disrupt fluidity and attacking intent. So there's that factor, lots of factors, but it's not surprising.
I look at it from the outside. I mean, I loved it when I was watching games on the telly and they were, 6-2 or 7-2, 5-4. That's brilliant for me. I'm happy as anything. I suppose as a coach working on your side of the fence, you enjoy watching some of the games that either have no goals or few goals.
Well, I always like to see goals. I think that's what the game's about. So we would take a 4-3 victory, no problem.
Can I ask you where Brighton are right now? I mean, are you going into 2021 looking at a relegation battle, would you say?
Well, I think we're where the league table is. We're fighting for points to improve where we are. That's the truth. We're not happy with the results we've been getting. We want to try and improve those. We want to try and improve where we are in the league. I think performances, as I've said before, have been generally quite good. So we go in with some optimism, but at the same time, you have to get the results because that's what it's about. And ultimately, if you don't get them, then you face pressure and criticism and negativity, and that's how it is. And fairly, and sometimes unfairly, but it doesn't matter. What we need to do is improve. We need to stick together and understand the situation we are. We've done well, but if you're not lucky, then you can face yourself in these situations. The key thing is how do you respond and how do you take on the challenge? And I'd like to think that certainly a lot of the people I've spoke to, supporters, are very supportive, very understanding, very complimentary, and we need to demonstrate that togetherness, I think.
My last one, obviously with January, everyone will ask you about transfers, and I kind of get the impression from your answer already to this that it's incumbent on the fact you've got a lot of players, so therefore maybe you might have to trim the squad. You've got a lot of players and some of them will need game time, so you're thinking about them and are they going to play much for you, so maybe they might have to leave to go and play. But how much is football finance right now going to come into your thinking? And how much even does something like Brexit come into your thinking about whether you can actually sign a player as easily as you did, say, 12 months ago?
there are lots of factors. If you look at what we've done in the summer, we got Adam Lallana for free, we got Danny Welbeck for free, and we got Joel Veltman for about €1 million. That's what we've spent. So we have to be smart with what we're doing because we understand the financial position of the club, and that's important to us. That doesn't mean to say you can't be successful. Doesn't mean to say you can't have ambition, because we have ambition to be a lot higher than where we are now. But at the same time, you have to have a foundation to work from. You can't just be too risky with what you're doing. You have to be careful with that, and I think the finances play a part. And also, like I said, the balance in terms of the group, the numbers you have. 28 is probably too many, and for the dynamic of the group, we probably need to adjust that a little bit.
Brilliant. Well, listen, happy New Year, and great seeing you throughout 2020.
And to you, thank you.
Yes. Cheers.
Thanks, Moose. Johnny.
Yeah, hi there, Graham. I just wonder whether, I know it's frustrating when the performances don't bring about the results that you want, but would you say that this is maybe the most challenging period you've had as a manager in your career?
Yeah, I would say it is. I've also had other challenging times. I think in Sweden we had a few years of challenging times, but I think because of the level, because of, like I said, off the pitch, we've had to deal with things which make it a challenge. So yeah, I would say it probably is, yeah.
Because do you sense like a little bit of pressure building? I know inevitably the table, if you're slipping down the table, that happens anyway, but do you sense it? I mean, you talked about support around the club and some people you speak to. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think, as I've said before, if you don't win football matches, it's harder to convince people that you're on the right path. That's just, and I can understand that. Like I said, we took over a team that finished with 36 points, and we got them to 41 in the first season. Changed the playing style, added some younger players. But you want to carry on improving, and results-wise, as it stands currently, they've not improved. So therefore, you can understand the criticism. You can understand that. As I've said before, I think we've got ambition, and I think if you look at our games this season, we've gone into the games believing and having a thought that we can win any game.
Yeah.
But we haven't. And at the same time, if you're not lucky, then you can find yourself in this situation. And the league table and the way that everything is after 10 games, you find yourself in a relegation battle. From the terminology that you face with, you've got another 28 games to play. But the way the media is and the way the game is, it's like, well, we need to create this pressure this end, and we create this pressure this end. And that's just life, and I accept that. It's football at the highest level. So with it comes pressure, with it comes challenge. Challenge isn't a bad thing. Just because it's the most challenging time in my career, it doesn't mean it's bad. I mean, I'm really fortunate and grateful for the opportunity to find out about myself and come through a tough period. So it is what it is.
Yeah. Just finally, I mean, ahead of 2021, have you got a message to the fans who I know would want to be there cheering on their side, who've had a frustrating year as well? Is there a message you've got to them for next year?
I'd say thank you to the ones that have supported me, because there's quite a few out there that have supported me through a difficult year. I bump into a lot of supporters, and they talk about, like, they can understand where we're going and they understand what's happening, and they want us to do well. You can sense that. Of course, I want to promise them that we'll be fighting every day to keep improving the team. The supporters have been great to me, fantastic. So, like I said, it's been a tough year, but I understand that not everybody's happy, and you're never going to get a situation really when that's the case. But the majority, and certainly the ones I've met, have been amazing. So I'd like to thank them for that.